Thanks for tuning in today. We're thrilled to have you with us.
Whether you're a seasoned real estate pro or just curious about what really happens behind the scenes at your closings, you're in for a treat.
Today we're diving into the world of title services with a company that's been making waves across the region. Their name is BesTitle.
Well, joining us today is Colin, who is the attorney underwriting counsel at BesTitle, and Alec, who does the business development. They are here to pull back that curtain on what BesTitle does, how they support both residential and commercial transactions, and why their work is essential to making real estate deals happen smoothly. So grab your coffee,
Or your wine, I won't judge.
settle in, and let's get into it, because this is one part of the home buying process you don't want to overlook. Thanks for joining us today. First of all, let's start with something easy. What is BesTitle for those who've never heard of BesTitle? What do you do? What services do you offer? Just kind of tell us who you all are.
Well, we are a closing attorney's office, so we are essentially, if you were to go to an independent real estate attorney and want to do a real estate closing, we do the same thing, except we have more of a team and more, I guess you'd say we could offer more than just an independent attorney would offer, so which we'll get into all the other things that we would offer. Deed preps, if you want to.
Yeah, I think we have, as a title company, being a closing attorney, we have much more manpower than an individual attorney's office would have. We offer all the services that a closing attorney would, and then I think, title searches, if you just want an independent title search on a property. I know there's a lot of lenders that we work with, that don't necessarily use us to do their closings, but if they want their title searches done on a property, they can send that order over and, be done pretty efficiently. And then, deed preps, stock preps, those are things of those natures. You need a deed done. We can turn that around in about a week. It's the same things that a closing attorney does, but like I said earlier, a little bit more manpower involved with a lot more employees and things of that nature.
Now, is that something unique to BesTitle, where you do closing as well as title work, or is that,
No, that would be, most attorneys would
Okay.
do that. I'd say to get a competitive advantage, that when he mentioned the manpower, we have more hands on every aspect of the closing process than, like I said, than a regular real estate attorney would.
Okay.
We do the exact same thing. It's just we try to be a little bit faster than the competition would be. So.
And just paint a broader picture for what does your team actually do? Is it all just signatures, paperwork, or are you having to actually go out there and...
Well, each of us have, kind of designated, with me, I'm in business development now, but I started out as an escrow officer. So whenever we get a file comes into the order department, order will come to me, him, one of the escrow officers independently. We get the orders opened up. We start looking at the preliminary, easy stuff that's already kind of, in the email or in the order in the purchase contract, as far as, and you as a real estate agent knows, you would put this, you would put, I already know that so-and-so has a lien. I already know that someone has a, outstanding mortgage or multiple mortgages on a property.
Right.
Start looking into that. I guess you can give your description of what you do as the attorney, because you're the king of the process. So
Yeah. So, to allude to your question, so we have title assistants, escrow officers, and, attorneys. Title assistants will be the ones to make those preliminary calls. Hello, I'm so-and-so with BesTitle. What's your contact information? What can I have the last 4 of your social security number? Those types of things, and just get the preliminary information. And then the escrow officer, and then sometimes myself, I am, separated from the communication most of the time, unless there's a major issue, or, in most cases, people just want to talk to the attorney, which is absolutely fine, and I enjoy that communication with the clients. It's much more personable, but the escrow officer is really that main point of contact, which I think a lot of independent real estate attorneys don't usually have.
Right.
So that makes, the title agency, specter just a little bit more unique than it would, say, a complete independent solo practitioner in real estate.
Exactly. Yeah. And really the escrow officers, as you know, that's how you and I started, working together.
Right.
I would do, and I still do, the closings. So really it gives him an opportunity to still stay at the desk, because he's got a lot to do. And a lot of attorneys get pulled away from, working on files and things like that, because the closing takes an hour. And if you've got 5 or 6 closings in one day, that attorney ends up running into, on a Friday where you got a lot of stuff going on and everything like that. If you don't have an assistant, you're doing all that on your own. It leaves a lot of space for a lot of room for error, if you will. Whereas, he's got, just in our Bridgeport office, for example, he's got Summer, Jamie, Paige. We have Natasha as our title assistant. She's fantastic. When you have that many people, and really, I know I'm not much of it, but I'm the 5th option in there if ever need be. When you have that many people that are able to hop into a file or jump into do this while this person's doing that, it gives us a big competitive advantage, just because, and we pride ourselves on being very personable too. So, like,
but you are.
I appreciate that. If he is, too busy and he needs me to call somebody, if I'm too busy and I need, like I said, if somebody's like, hey, Alec, I can only hear so much from you. I need to hear it from an attorney. My guys always got me covered. And really, the girls they are brilliant. I mean, they're pretty much attorneys in themselves, when they're just very, very experienced, very confident too. So yeah.
Well, I know, being a realtor, that if it was not a team effort for you all, it'd take forever to get to closing. I mean, I enjoy using BesTitle because I know the ball's not going to get dropped and your plates are not going to be so full that you can't get it done on time. As a realtor, buyer, seller, we want it done on time. This is when we expect our closing to be done. So I appreciate that from you all.
And yeah, I mean, like you said, it definitely is. We like to be as fast as possible, as nice as possible. It sets you apart from the other guys. So,
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
So BesTitle is not just here in West Virginia, correct?
No, we are licensed. We're actually really trying to expand big time. So we
Okay.
started out. So my owner of our company, our boss, Tom Klein, he started the company back in 1991.
Okay.
Since then, we've opened up 16, 17, about to be 18 offices.
Nice.
Which we will be in Buchanan here in the next few months.
Very nice.
We're licensed in Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, and now Virginia. Looking into...
Not Montana.
Not in Montana quite yet.
Not yet.
Yes. That's for... We'll talk to the bosses about that down the road. You know what? I always tell them I want an office in every state on the East Coast, so we'll get to that point before... Unless my friend out in Montana reaches out to them, and yes, we'll see about that. But no, we would like to get to PA and Maryland, because Pennsylvania and Maryland obviously have a ton of business going on.
Sure.
And, as far as the title insurance that comes with the purchase prices on those homes, that would also be something that would interest us too. So I don't write the checks for our company, so all I can do is try to motivate my boss to do so.
Well, that kind of segue into the next question with BesTitle. Do you also do commercial closings, not just residential?
We do.
Yeah, actually, just recently, we one of our attorneys that's been with us for a while now, she mainly does a lot of work out of like the Beckley offices, does work in Princeton and more down the southern part of the state. She's actually been designated as one of our commercial attorneys. And I'm pretty sure we had an escrow officer, specifically assigned to those roles as well, so they could be, those commercial deals could be a streamlined process, which is extremely enticing to a lot of clients, and I know a lot of commercial lenders in the state.
And we are trying to climb in the commercial space. Residential was the main focus, I would say, but clearly, that would just give us another additive onto what we could offer people. So yes, we're trying to climb in that.
By the way, I'm from Bluefield, so I'm down in that neck of the woods.
You know all about that
I
area.
forgot
I know
about
all
that,
about
Tammy.
that.
I forgot all about that.
Yeah, so very cool. Sometimes my accent competes with Chris over here and his.
Well, I'm from up northern part of the state, and you and I have about the same accent. So,
So we've talked a little bit about it, but cue the music. Our offer's been accepted. The buyer and seller are all in agreement, and we have decided to use BesTitle for title and closing. And I know you've talked a little bit about how once we send it to you all, more of a blueprint of what goes in on your side. Once you receive it, what are kind of the steps and the title process, and then getting to closing?
So
I know it's a lot.
I was about to say I'll probably miss a few things going
Of
over
course.
all this. Well, going back to the multiple hands in each file, you have an escrow officer, you have a title assistant, you have me in the business development, you have an attorney, you have processing. So the people in the back offices, the ones that work from home, they are also, everyone is tasked with, you get this, you get that, you get this, you get that. Which a lot of people, so I was going to say this a little bit earlier, but I was moving a little bit too fast. A lot of agents kind of look at that like it's a bad thing at times, because you go, oh, that kind of leaves room for some confusion, or oh, this person wants to do that and this person should be doing that. We feel like we have a wonderful setup of organization with all that.
A well-oiled machine.
Yes, and I know you have obviously got to see it, so that
Yes.
would be not for me to say whether or not it is good or not, but
It was great.
We definitely think it's the best. I guess you would maybe give a better description on what does the processor do for you and things like that.
So I'll try to keep inside of the question because he's not doing a very good job.
Yeah, I was gonna say I go all over the place. I'm thinking about 10 different things. So.
I'm just kidding. But so from the time we get the purchase agreement,
Okay.
and all that information, we open a file in our system that's called Qualia.
Okay.
And we'll have the title assistant or the escrow officer reach out to the parties, confirm information. This is the correct tract of land that is, you're conveying or that you're buying, depending on who you're talking to. Purchase price is correct. Are you using a lender? Is this the lender's correct information? All the basic preliminary stuff that we need for the file is collected. And then we'll send the abstractor out who's going to go run the title search. And,
Okay.
Depending on the county, some counties it's all online. Like I think Marion County is mostly online now, except if you get too far back, then you have to go down into the basement for some of those land books.
I actually love going into the record room.
Yeah. It used to be my favorite thing.
I just experienced it for the first time a few weeks
Seriously?
ago. I had never gone down there.
The smell
That was-
and those big books.
It is.
I love it.
Well, and that is the coolest courthouse in
Isn't
the state
it?
of West Virginia.
If you can find
If you can get around to it. Yeah, so you can get lost in there very easily too. But I can't say I love. It wouldn't be my
I enjoyed it.
You liked it?
The
I
musty
did.
smell of
The mustard. That's what I was getting ready to say. It was very
Especially
like.
go to
woo.
wheel books,
Yeah, you can smell the 1930s when you walk in there.
I
Yes.
love it.
Yeah.
When I was getting trained, it was my favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
We go down there, and we go down to Greenbrier County, where everything at that time I think was in the books, and it was so much fun. You'd spend all day in there, and then 4:30 rolls around, they're kicking you out because you can't be
I
in there any
know
longer.
Bluefield, Tazewell County, in that area, they don't have an IDX, so it's still have to go to the courthouse.
I think Marion County was
Just recent.
just like in the not I think the last year,
Okay.
because when I first started, it was at times very frustrating when we had a Marion County file because things were.
Because that's time consuming. I mean, if the abstractor can get everything online, that could
Right.
just take a couple hours depending on how complicated it is. But if, say, our abstractor in Morgantown has to drive to Marion County
Sure.
or Harrison County and then spend all day in there, and maybe even that whole day they can't get everything that they need and they have to go back. That could be, a process that holds up a closing, honestly,
Yep.
maybe by a couple days. But, I mean, once the abstractor gets that information, comes to me, my processor will type up, commitment, chain letters, tax certifications, all those types of things that I need to be able to review and approve the file. Are there any liens on the property? Then that's when we have our great pre-closing department who will go and get the payoffs for these liens, And a lot of times sellers will say, hey, I have an open mortgage. Thank you for telling us that, we found that. But a lot of times they don't know some of these other things, Hey, there's an oil and gas lease across this land that you own. Or, hey, you have a judgment lien for unpaid taxes for a couple grand. And those things can also be, sticky situations that hold up closings. But once we get through that, get the payoffs, and that's when the escrow officer kind of steps back in, prepares all these documents, says, hey, this is the cash to close. What time works best for everybody to show up to closing? And then the escrow officer usually at that point takes over, and I'm kind of only there in not emergency situations, but whenever, a client really wants an attorney to do the closing, or if they have questions about prices on, a settlement statement, like, why are you charging me this much for this? And I'll come in and, say, hey, this is the reason that we do it this way. But that's kind of, the whole basis. After the closing, we're giving out keys. I mean, you know that as well as anybody. We're printing checks, sending out documents to be recorded at the courthouse, and other things of that nature. And I think that basically hits it all from a bird's point of view. I mean, we could really.
Yeah, if we let
Like
Alec
I
tell
said,
us,
well,
we'd
that's
be here
what-
till tomorrow.
I swear when you said it, I was like, stop talking, just let Colin do it, because we're gonna be here for an hour and a half just on this topic. So.
Well, with title issues, they are like unexpected plot twists, and so how do you keep the drama low and focus on the closing within your team?
Whew. As you know, sometimes you can't. Sometimes I guess that's where I make my money. That's where I go in and I kind of try to calm things down. I can either be really good at that or really bad at that sometimes because, I can get people riled up. But whenever, they are, I'm trying to think of a specific, maybe like an earnest money check or something like that, or maybe a buyer or seller has heard something one way, but it wasn't really explained that way. If there is a lender and an agent that, don't get along very well, which happens.
Oh, I'm sure.
Buyers and sellers that want to kill each other, things like that. There's certain things that all we can do is try to diffuse it, try to calm it down as much as possible. We separate both parties when we do closings. One is going to be in the buyer's room, one's going to be in the seller's room. If we know that there is something, there is just some deep drama, what divorces and other things, that is where things get very nasty, and understandably so. We'll try to, maybe husband comes in 10 a.m., wife comes in 4 p.m. That way we've got a nice 5 to 6
Divorce
hours.
situation, yeah.
Yes, divorce situations are definitely, that's where we see the most, or heirs.
Right.
That is another thing. I mean, we brothers and Sally and Bob hate Sandra, their sister, so much, and
Get vicious.
yes, and those are the two biggest that I can think of. And we just try to talk to all parts. We do. Communication is literally number one. That is the number one thing that we hone in on with any file, because you can never have too much communication. Once things are understood, then we can do our job perfectly as we can, and that's pretty much what we do.
I'm asking this question for the wife. How come he gets to come in for us?
That
No.
that happened last week. That happened on Friday. That literally happened on Friday. That is when I look at the husband and go, that's your question. I just saw the name on title, and he's the one that's supposed to be signing, and let him explain that to you. So, yeah.
So, obviously, you can't sell a house if it still has a lien. You can't close on it, correct? You have to clear that. So, once everything's clean, the liens. Let me ask you this. So, have you ever had a seller refuse to pay their liens and it just doesn't go to close? Oh, does it happen a lot? Okay.
It's not as frequent thing, because once you explain it to them, like, hey, we can't sell this property. Like, my job as a closing attorney is to convey clear, marketable title. No liens on the property. You're giving this property to the buyer. There's nothing that it can come back on them for, owing money or anything that's attached to the land, such as a lien. But you will have situations where, like with mobile homes or with, large, like I said, large tax liens.
Yes.
$20,000 tax lien. So it says, well, I'm not paying this. I'm not going to pay this before closing. And then it really just comes down to, well, then we can't close, and you're not going to get your proceeds. And as hard as it is to explain that to somebody, that's the hard truth most of the time. We can't move forward, especially as giving out title insurance, through our underwriters. They're not going to allow that. And that can be hard conversations that have to be had with parties, and especially buyers. And then we've had situations where buyers have offered to even pay these liens for sellers just to get, title to the property.
Yep. We haven't, funny that you just said it, we really haven't, knock on wood, had anything too crazy in the last year or so. Just to get very specific with it, I had a deal when I first started out as an escrow officer where we ran it as a refinance, but essentially we had an uncle selling his property, or his half of his property, to his brother and his nephew. Well, they already didn't get along, and they had come to a decision on 55,000. That's what you owe me. Da da da. Well, then we do the title search, and uncle has $26,000 child support lien, and I'm not gonna get too deep into
Right,
it, but
but-
it was a year and a half of just absolute, and we had two or three different lenders that came in on it, because one was like, I'm not dealing with this, dropped it. We get the file again, and I actually got it twice. The third time I didn't have to close it, thank God. I don't know, my wonderful coworker, she ended up having to finish it out for me. But yeah, there's a lot of, I don't say a lot of times, but there's just times where you go, this is out of our, we just did what we had to do. We did the title search, we found this out, we relay it, and that's something you guys are going to have to, and I know you've had to kind of go between two parties and go, hey, this is the way it's going to be. There's nothing that you can get around it, in no way to get around it to do it. So unless you're willing to eat this $23,000 child support, you won't get the other, what would it be, 32 or however much would be left over. So yeah.
So let me ask you this, because this was brought up to me this weekend. I got a phone call from a client, and it wasn't from BesTitle, but they had purchased a home, and it had gone through 2 sales, and whoever did the title on both did not catch the fact that it had a heir. So now it's been caught here locally that there's an heir, and now the heir is not ready to sign off because she's going to have to back pay some taxes and things. So do you see that kind of scenario happen? I mean, what happens what does this person, what leg do they have to stand on if something like that happens?
So luckily enough, I have not had to deal with that many times, because our abstractors are really good, and it's not us fixing problems that
It's created by somebody else.
somebody else most of the time. Yeah, but in a situation like that I have seen before, that heir still has an interest in that property. I mean, they didn't sign
No
the
way
deed.
around it.
Yeah, they didn't sign the deed. They didn't sign any closing documents. They still have an interest that they're going to have to either be paid off, like you said, or just hopefully most of the time just offer them, say, hey, I'll give you a little bit of money if you just sign this quitclaim deed, giving it to the owner now, because that is just a whole bundle of mess.
Yes.
I mean, when there's floating interest out there, that's really one of my worst nightmares.
Yeah.
Having to go back and figure out, track these people down, especially if it was 2 prior transactions ago. You have to go find these people.
Well, apparently the attorney had retired, and then this
worse.
lady, the heir, eyes lit up. I've got land. I've got money.
Yeah.
I've got, so she's all about it.
Right.
So I was just curious if that's something.
Which, yeah, good for her. I mean, that's great. But and I'm glad you said it. I love our abstractors. I think we have a great group of abstractors at BesTitle. I mean, from top to bottom through the state, we are very lucky to have the crew that we have, and they barely ever miss anything. And if so, they might miss little things.
I know I haven't had any issues at all.
And that's where, I know we're going to get to it. That's where your title insurance comes into
Right.
play. So
Gotcha.
I'm going to stop talking there, because I know that's on its way.
So yeah, we'll go with title issues. What are some of your, usual suspects, and what comes across your plate?
What's common?
Well, estate issues, I know we just kind of spoke about those. Those are number one, I think, by far and away. Estate issues are number one. Wills, people like to argue over how to interpret a will, which is where I come into play. And, you have to communicate with these beneficiaries or heirs. There's a lot of West Virginia codes and laws where it's better to just have all the heirs sign if it's within a certain amount of time from a date of death. Does the executor named in a will have the power to sell the property? A lot of things can come with the state. Who's getting what with the money is always a big thing that comes up. But two other big things that I see a lot of issues with are recent foreclosures.
Okay.
So say we have a seller that, a bank or a trustee of a prior deed of trust that is trying to sell a property. Us as a title company have to make sure that everybody that was supposed to be notified in that prior foreclosure was properly noticed of the foreclosure. And another thing is tax sales. Tax sales are a big thing. And I know one of our more reliable underwriters, releases these bulletins every once in a while explaining how to deal with those. And those things are ever, changing. I mean, the rules can change pretty frequently. But again, with tax sales, you have to make sure the proper parties were notified that their properties, you haven't been paying taxes.
Right.
And, that these properties are going to go to tax sales and can be redeemed by just another party. So I'd say those are mainly the big three specifically title issues that I see. But estates, I think, are by far the number one thing that I deal with.
So, preparing for closing, what do sellers and buyers sometimes overlook? Are they little things? Are they big things? What are some last minute complications, I guess, that you see maybe at the closing table? I know when COVID hit, some people lost their job, and it was like, you're ready to close, and then they lost their job, so you couldn't.
Which I guess he and I are kind of green on that because we came in, 2022, 23, so we were kind of getting towards the back end of people, the people that were losing
COVID.
their jobs and everything through COVID. To hone in on that question specifically, nothing really crazy, and I guess I will just say because we like to communicate everything, and we really do. That's what, as an escrow officer, every one of the escrow officers, we are so good about, like, you kind of have a checklist, and you go through that checklist, and whether it be irritating the buyers and sellers to the point where they are totally in the know, there is no room for ignorance or anything like that. We don't like to leave room for error that
So
way.
every I's dotted, every T's crossed before they get to the table.
Or
Yeah,
even show
and
up.
there are things, I know for certain. I know you know this too. There's a lot of sellers that are like, I'm answering the phone one time and I'm giving you 3 or 4 different things for personal information. Here's my bank account. I want my check on closing day, and they're very difficult. At that point, I would then say, as a seller, you kind of have to understand that if you don't communicate with us, you leave yourself open to being unaware of certain things on closing day. Buyers, we don't really. They're eager. They
Sure.
want to know. They definitely are like, tell me this, tell me that. I'm gonna be ready. And you obviously are very good about communicating with your buyers and sellers on, you need to do this, you need to do that. Love you for that.
Thanks.
And really the lenders too. So, there's a lot of things that every piece of the puzzle has to put in there. But yeah, we really don't run into that too often. We normally are everybody's in the know come closing day.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Nice.
Once closing is done, everybody breathes a sigh of relief. What is the next process that has to be done after that? What is...
Well, we have a title assistant. She will, after the escrow officer and or attorney is done with the closing, make sure everything's notarized. We notify the agent and the lender that everything's gone smoothly. If there's any other hiccups or any other issues or questions that have came up in the closing room, we might pass those along. But for the most part, that's when we just get the packet, ship it back to the lender and or wherever they'd like it to go, and get the deeds, send everything over for recording or any other document that needs recorded. And then you're looking at, I skipped this most important part, but everybody starts getting their paychecks.
That's right. I thought you were going to forget the most important
heading
thing.
home with. I didn't want to immediately say that, but everybody's there at the end of the day to either buy, sell,
Or get some keys.
or get some get some cash. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So
Very good.
simple closing process.
Well, we have gotten some great questions from some of our listeners. So our first question, I'm going to let Chris notate there. I guess a listener from Buchanan has sent us in a question there.
Yeah, our first question comes from a listener in Buchanan. What is the difference between a title and a deed?
So I get this question more than you would think. I get this question a lot, actually. So,
Right.
and the way I try to explain it is, a deed is a physical, instrument, right? That everybody, the seller is signing to convey property away. That's the actual physical element.
You can hold on to it.
You can hold the deed.
Gotcha.
Title itself is the concept of what the deed is doing. So the deed is transferring the title. So if that makes sense, and I think that's the way people have told me before, that's the best way to explain it. It's a physical thing to a concept, and title is of course who owns it, who has title to this land.
Right.
And then the deed, of course, is that instrument that is conveying title to that land. Is the way that I've explained it before, and I think is the easiest way to do so. And I
Couldn't have done it better
I
myself.
think I'll stick with that.
That's kind of the way I learned it as well.
Yeah.
So our next question is from Jackson in Bridgeport, and I get this one a lot as well, and I'm sure you do too. What exactly does title insurance cover, and do we really need it?
You want to go? You want to
You're both gasping.
go?
Go ahead.
It is extremely important, in my opinion. And I'll just give a quick story. So we actually, before I got deep into being an escrow officer, I kind of, I didn't even know what it protected against. I was very ignorant to what is so important about title insurance. Or is it just like, oh, we're trying to get this
Upsell.
Yeah. It is so important, and as me being a salesperson, if you will, some people don't always, they just think I'm trying to pawn something off on them. Boundary line disputes, missed heirs. I could go through so many different things, but you do not want to find out 3 years after you closed on something that you might not even own the property that you purchased.
Well, kind of like that story I just told you that I got a call about, where they went through 2 attorneys and
That's
some
exactly
heir
what that protects
that
against
would protect.
too.
Yep.
And we had one, a woman from First American actually came and spoke to us about a year ago, and she gave me the greatest story ever. I use this in closing rooms all the time, and this is a true story right out of Fairmont, West Virginia.
Okay, tell us.
So we had, there is, I'm not going to get too specific because people might know I'm telling their life story right now. There's a development out in the southern part of our county here.
Okay.
And it went up a little bit too fast, if you will. I think people were cutting some corners and things were being done that maybe shouldn't have been done.
Gotcha.
Long story short, this woman purchases a home out there. It was a home or a townhouse. This was during COVID. So bought 2020, 21, and then rates then go absolute down. She was like, whoa, time for refinance, and this is going to be fantastic, And she goes to refinance, and she realizes that she's been paying a mortgage on the pile of dirt across the street.
Oh, wow.
And
Wow.
you just go, oh, let me call my lender, let me call my agent. Well, the lender's like, that's fine, as long as you got title insurance. Because the lenders will get, that's another thing you'll probably see in a lot of settlement statements. The lenders, a lot of lenders will say, we require lenders title insurance because they don't want to deal with it. Why would they want to deal with that? A lot of owners, and I will say, it's really not a huge amount of money. They see that last $500-$600 on the closing table. Oh, I've already spent enough. I don't want to do it. If you can figure it out, it's so worthwhile, because this woman then calls the closing attorney and says, hey, good Lord Almighty, I just found out I've been paying on a pile of dirt across the street. Can you send me the information on my title insurance? Well, she goes and she looks it up, and she has a document that states, I do not want title insurance. It's very sad, but it was, this woman ended up having to go through ridiculous. I mean, it was. I'm not going to get too deep into it. I think it took 3 or 4 years and $40,000 in attorney fees.
Wow.
Where you go, I think I don't have the exact amount. I think it was $438.
For the title insurance.
For the title
One time
insurance,
payment.
and it
One
protects,
time.
and that is you do that at the closing table, and it protects you through the
One
life of the
time
loan.
payment.
Well worth
I
it.
can't say I am just for example, I'm building a house right beside my mother and my father.
Really?
Obviously, and I love them to death, and I'm still going to get title insurance just because you just don't. I bought the lot from them. You can never be.
Do you
too
think
sure.
we're numb because of this phone calls from extended warranty? Maybe we
Yeah.
have a class
Who
action
needs
lawsuit
insurance?
there.
Who needs
Exactly.
the insurance?
I
like I
think
said,
everybody's
that's
just
people-
numb because people think that upselling, but it's
Yeah.
not. It's
Absolutely.
protection. in the
Before
long
I
run.
started doing this, I'm telling you, I even the day we went in to do this, thing with the woman from First American, I still was a skeptic sometimes. Even though it's,
Right.
I would sit there and go, oh, maybe they should get it. I wouldn't get it either. You always put yourself in that position. And that's the story I told you guys is one of 30. I mean, and then we've run into it at BesTitle where people have gone, oh, this happened or this happened. And they'll call in, or hey, I did this with a previous attorney, and they didn't get title insurance. And I hate it, but I have to go. I can't. There's nothing we can do for you. And we offered this to you at closing, or they offered this to you at closing, and you didn't take it.
Yeah.
So it's something that I know I sound like a BSer, but I cannot push it enough. You would better safe than sorry is the best way to describe it.
Gotcha.
Easily. So.
Great
And I
answer.
had another question, and this is actually Mary from Fairmont is asking, what happens during the closing appointment? What do I need to bring?
Your ID, most importantly.
As a buyer or a seller?
I think she's buying.
As a buyer, yeah, the driver's license is going to be the most important. We got to make sure that
You are who you say you are.
Colin could walk in and say I'm Alec Wadesworth and sign for me, and the next thing you know, I'm going deep into what issues that could be. Driver's license, obviously, if you owe some money,
Cash to close.
cash to close, whether it be your wire that you sent in, your cashier's check that you sent in, or we're supposed to bring in, things like that. But for the most part, we've got pens for you waiting at the office. And that's the blue ink signature is the most important thing we're going to need from you that day.
So I know the answer, but why blue
Well,
ink? Why not
because-
black
and
ink?
I learned this from my Mon Valley Bank days. When we scan the documents in, and after every closing, everything is scanned in to a database that keeps everything on file. Because we now do physical and digital storage. When you scan black ink, it looks like it's just a copy of something. Whereas with blue
I'm
ink,
impressed.
did you not think I knew that?
I'll be honest, I didn't.
Oh, look at he's giving me my credit today. I knew that we literally were not allowed to have black ink pens in the bank when I worked at the bank,
Right.
and we still, I don't know what's the word, we don't allow them at the office at BesTitle, but in the closing room, absolutely, because a lot of people, this is when people get mad at me, they'll bring their own pen. You'd be
Right.
surprised how many people
Right.
want to use their own pen in
Right.
the closing room. And I've had multiple guys go, this is my pen, and I say, is it blue ink? No. Might be your favorite pen. You're not going to be using it today. I'm sorry. Yeah, because I would rather make you mad now than to tell you after you sign 196 pages that we got to do the whole thing again because you chose not to use blue ink pen. So, yes.
Well, Colin, Alec, we're so glad you're here today. Is there anything you want to touch on before we go? I appreciate your expertise, your stories, your just your candor. So I appreciate it.
Is there any other questions you guys? I was going to say any funny stuff, any things you guys were like, we forgot to ask this or.
Tell us a funny story. What a funny closing or title. Give me some stories. Come on.
You did ask me to. You should have.
I know. I should have
You should
told
have
you.
put this on. I would have thought of a funny story.
I think most of my stories are horror stories.
Yeah, I didn't want to. I didn't want. Any of the. Hey, you know me, I like to be Mr. Personality at the closing table. So, I definitely, I always try to make it fun when I do closings.
He does.
I don't do as many anymore because I am out and about a good bit and I dance between a lot of different offices. But when I do closings, a lot of the time, some of my lender friends might want to shoot me if they hear this, but a lot of the time the buyers will get to the closing table and they're exhausted. They go through a lot of going through this, going through that, signing this, signing that, talking to this person, talking to that person. I pride myself on let's make this, let's have fun with this. Let's get it over with. If you got any big questions, ask me. But if not, let's get through this. It's probably, a lot of people sign on Fridays. I know you guys want to start moving into your house and enjoying the weekends and things like that. That is really what I hone in on because, I see a lot of people that are so stressed out about this kind of stuff that, there is no really way you can avoid it. It's the process.
Right.
I really like to put a smile on people's face, and I will say this one, he is my counterpart with it. He could do business development if he wanted to. He's just a really good attorney, so we got him working in that. But no, we do. We like to make, and our whole team. The whole Bridgeport, the Morgantown staff. We're gonna have some people in Buchanan too, and really every office. My bosses are very good about hiring personalities.
Well, I will say you are very lighthearted, and
I appreciate
you
that.
do feel the stress in the room sometimes, and you just are very communicating to them and just get their mind off. You start talking about their families. You start about, something
Well,
to get their mind off.
If I'd have been walking into a closing room with you this morning, buddy, we forgot about the closing process rather quickly because I don't know a stranger in the whole Tri-City area. I like to say that I know everybody. I'm gonna start.
I think you do.
I'm gonna start asking you, hey, where'd you go to high school? Where do you live? Where'd you do? Who you friends with? And I'm really gonna be honing in on that during the closing process.
Did you swim at your friends' pools?
Did you swim with your friends during COVID? Exactly. And I do. I like for people to remember me too. Because that's
You're hard to forget.
I appreciate that, Tammy. I do. I like for people to go, man. This guy was a loud mouth, and he was this, and he wouldn't shut up, but. I kind of enjoyed him. He wasn't that bad. He's dumb, but he was funny. That brings in more business. That's a lot of the time. That's why I said he's the greatest because a lot of attorneys are tough personalities, and they deal with a lot of stress. So
Sure.
I totally get it. But that's what I kind of am. From start to finish of this podcast, we've kind of honed in on it. That's what we like to do to separate ourselves from the competition. I want to smile. I want to. When you're leaving, I want you to not only have that check in your hand or those keys in your hand, but I want you to be like, that was awesome. That was a whole lot easier than I thought it was.
Right.
So, that's what we pride ourselves on. So,
Colin, anything before we go?
No, I think Alec tackled it pretty well. I will say
He does talk a lot.
he does.
I will
he
say-
knows. He knows.
I will say that I do appreciate, even if we don't have an open file with anybody, I am more than welcome to field questions or calls about anything in the real estate world.
Okay.
I always appreciate when, an agent or a lender calls and asks me a question that they think could be a problem beforehand, and that communication that we talked about that's so important. If we can get ahead of that before you send an order, that makes my job and I think everybody's life 100 times easier. So I am always more than welcome, to do those things, to listen to people. If people have questions, just give me a call and I'll happily answer and we can talk about it. But I'll say thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, this was
Here.
awesome.
Talk about it.
This was
I
awesome.
appreciate you all coming,
Definitely.
and maybe we'll do it again sometime.
Absolutely.
I
I
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
For
Thank
sure.
you.
For sure.
That's a wrap on today's episode.
Huge thanks again to Alec Wadesworth and Colin Molnar from BesTitle for joining us. We love the energy, the insights, and the laughs that we all had.
And if you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, share it with someone who could use a little real estate wisdom in their life.
And we'll be back next time with more great guests and even better stories.